Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and I think it's about time I did something to bring that exhaust up to match the rest of the spec of Harry. So a lot of you have been commenting for a while now that the exhaust here is looking pretty beaten up and old, and yes, this is the original exhaust that I modified several years ago when I was first building Harry, before I ever got it on the road. And as you might have seen from some of these other videos, I've played some clips here, it sounds great. But I am worried that I'm actually leaving some power on the table, and also it just doesn't match up to the spec of everything else on this car. So I think it's time to look at upgrading it. And I've got some plans that I think should be pretty good, because I want this to be something that I can still comfortably drive on the road, on long road trips, and not have to wear earmuffs or just be driven crazy by a drony exhaust. I want it to sound just right, but yeah, I really want it to match what I've done with the rest of this car. So first things first, let's get up on the lift and see if we can get this old exhaust off. All right, well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually not going to get rid of this muffler completely. What I'm going to do is I'm going to join on to the old piece here. I'm going to cut this out, and I'm going to add in a V-band clamp. Now, I am going to be going up to 2 1/4 inch for the muffler at the back here, even though this back here is 2 inch. The outlets on this exhaust are 2 1/4 inch, and that is the way I'm going to be going with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in this V-band clamp in the middle here and make it so that I can put this old exhaust back on again. So this will be an option, but generally what I'm going to be doing is getting rid of this completely and running my whole new exhaust. Okay, so I have fitted my V-band clamps now. They're tacked together. I basically, all of this is all in stainless steel, and all the exhaust from the back is stainless steel. This is mild steel on this side, but I'm going to trim it up and make them all fit nicely. But now I can remove this rear muffler and do the muffler on the bench. The rest of this V-band clamp I will do on the car, and we'll get it all tidied up. All right, I've gone through now. I've brought up the V-bands onto the old exhaust. So now I need to pull off the extractors, the headers, and get them onto the bench and finish welding them up. All right, it's a couple of days later. Actually, with the V-bands on there, I managed to put the old exhaust back on so I could drive it over the weekend. And now I'm getting stuck back into it again, and it's time for phase 2. Now, my plan with this exhaust is I'm worried that the factory exhaust potentially creates a bit of a restriction that could be costing me a little bit of power. So I was looking for mufflers that I could put in to free things up and make things a little bit more predictable. And I got myself a couple of these things. Now, I went for this muffler mostly because it's a triple pass muffler. So inside the this tube runs through here, it turns around the end, comes through its center baffled section, and then back around through the top. Now, what my plan is I actually want to have this thing, as you might have seen in the title, as a bimodal exhaust, basically has two modes, has two settings, so that I can either have it quiet, which will run through all three parts of these mufflers, or what I plan on doing is punching a hole through the bottom here, so that and having these electronic valves so that it can open up and the exhaust can just travel through one part of the muffler and out, so that it's much louder and I can hear the glory of it when I want to. So along with these mufflers, I also got myself a couple of donuts, because basically it's some very tight bends to get these things to fit into the car. And I'll run through the design in a little bit, but I bought a couple of these donuts. So these have been welded on the outside. They're not welded on the inside yet. I'm obviously going to cut them open. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make the crossover pipe, because I'll demonstrate it later, but basically it's going to come out of the exhaust on either side, come together, cross over, go into the mufflers, go through the mufflers, and then back down and out. That is the basic design. And then when you open the valves, they'll just go through the bottom and then out. So it'll join back in. Same exhaust tips for both. It'll just sort of join back in or not. So first things first, let's cut this in half and see if we can make our crossover section to put back into the car. All right, so this is an exercise in packaging, and those who've been following the RSR Build will have seen that I am getting used to that. Basically, this is the this is the only size of muffler I could get. That's this is 2 1/4 inch. But what I need to be able to do is I need to be able to put this up in here at such a space so that I've got two of these mufflers that need to sit side by side. I need to have the that X pipe I just made in between them right here. So I need to first of all try and work out a way to actually hold these mufflers up. Now, I'm not sure if the camera angle's there, but there's these tabs, the original tabs that the factory muffler mounted on. So I'm going to reuse them, but I might drill a couple of holes through them so that I can put some hose clamps on. And I just bent up a couple of these little bits of stainless. So these are going to hook onto those pieces with a hose clamp, so I can just hold them into place, and that will be enough to just sort of give something to take the weight of the muffler. So I will drill some holes, hose clamp these on, and then I can put the mufflers in place and tack them in so that they are held somehow. All right, that was a lot of work just trying to get these things aligned and holding them in place while I made the little mounts on the back. I've made the mounts so they both go in from one side. I stuffed them up. At first I had them going into the like that, and then realised once I welded them together there's no way to get them out. So I changed it around so they're like this, so I can move the whole lot off and unclip it down and get it off. I've got the X pipe in the center now, joined up, and these sit in here, sort of, they'll sit up sort of roughly like that. They're nice and even. The angles are all matched and nice, which, as I said, was a lot of work. Now, underneath at these V-band clamps, I actually bought 3 V-band clamps, and so that I can, as I said, switch between the factory exhaust and this one, depending on which I want to use. Hopefully this one works nicely, but I can keep chucking on the old one if need be. The tips are going to have to be wider than they were before. It's just how it's going to be. This just sits, these are just so wide, these mufflers, that there's just no other way to do it. So I've got to now join the X pipe back to the V-band clamps here, so I can just join these up, and then I need to work out what I'm going to do as far as getting the ends of these to work. That is a lot of work just to get it to this state where I've basically got it so it mounts into the car and it mounts up. And I still haven't finished the tips yet, but the center is laid out. So now it's time to get out the TIG welder and start welding this all into one piece. Okay, well, that's not the prettiest, but it's all welded up. So it's now time to just chuck it back on the car and see how it all sits. Hopefully it hasn't warped too much. All right, day 3 on this exhaust, and what I'm going to do now, it's basically when I welded it all together, it did shrink slightly, and these 2 ends have come in a little bit. So I'm going to cut through this tube now, cut through the weld that I did previously, and let it expand out, and then I'll tack it back together again, and then hopefully I'll be able to weld it up without it shrinking too much, and it should actually do the job. So let's trim and let's make this thing fit. All right, all welded up again. So now it's time to go through and actually start punching a hole through this end of the muffler. Now, if I was smart, I would have actually done that before I welded this whole thing together. It would have been much easier because I would have been able to get my hydraulic sort of hole punch, probably get the other piece, the male piece in the other end of the muffler and punch it through. But as I didn't do that, now I have to actually do it all by hand. So do a bunch of drilled holes and then die grind, etc. So for starters, let's drill a hole in the middle, make sure I can get this in the right spot, and start, making my hole. All right, that was a lot of work trying to cut that hole out because it's got a curved section inside the muffler that guides the exhaust sort of down, and then it curves it around to go back up through the center baffle. So getting it there was tough, but basically what I'm doing is I need to weld this piece on the end here. Now The rest of the exhaust is going to be welded solid, so you're not really going to be able to unbolt this, but you may be able to unbolt and slide out the actual motor itself, the actual valve motor that I've got in here, so that if it does die, you'll be able to unbolt it, slide it out, slide another one in, and replace it if need be. But worst case, I can just cut it apart again and weld it back up. But hopefully it doesn't die anyway, and it should just do the job for ever. Anyway, let's weld this fitting on now. I'm going to have to weld it mostly from the inside because I can't get around the outside because of the lid. Let's get it in and keep moving forward. All right, so the valve actuator actually sits in a beautiful spot, nice and up, tucked out of the way. It's not going to get caught up with things. This is the pipe that the kit came with for this this adjuster. Obviously, I'm not going to use this. I'm not going to have the exhaust sticking out with a weird T on it. So I just need to lop this off now, and I just wanted to place it all in there and just sort of make sure that it all fits sitting nice. So now it's time to cut these off and see what I can do about making the new exhaust that goes where I want it to go. All right, so hopefully now you can see here what I've done. So the original exit for the exhaust, so after it's done 3 passes, is all the way up the top here. And when this valve opens, it's going to let the exhaust go straight through and just do a single pass. So my hope is that it will actually be much quieter coming out of the top when this is closed, and when this is open, it will get louder. That's the theory. Now, this is what I've made up as my sort of my exhaust pipe. It's just tacked together at the moment, just a couple of tacks, but I've taken the a bend off of this bend here will come straight out of the flapper valve, and the other one will go up and join up. I have to join up with the top, and then this here is the actual exhaust tip itself, which I can cut to length at a later time. So let's measure it up now and see if we can tack it in the right spot so that it's not all wonky everywhere. All right, that was a couple of hours really trying to get everything right so that the both outlets are at the same level. They're both canted outward slightly, just because they're so far around on the bumper, and also that's the way they sort of fell. But I sort of feel that that works better than if they were perfectly square. But they're the same level, they're square, they're straight. So now it's time to take the whole thing off, weld it all up, and then I think I've got the exhaust basically made. Wow, that's a lot of work. Wow, that was a lot of work. We've got it in now, and it's time to, I've got it all sort of bolted back up again. It's time to lower the car back down, connect up the battery again, and let's see what it sounds like. I'm really interested. I haven't cut these to length or anything yet. This is just, let's just see how it goes. That is very civilized. That sounds nice. I'm quite happy with that. It's probably a little bit quieter than it was before, which is not a bad thing. And with the controllers, when I actually install them, I should be able to make it so I can switch it between the two. So I can make it louder, which is not connected yet. At the moment, it's just quiet. So that's the way it's gonna stay. As you can hear, I'm talking loudly, so it's not that quiet. Let me turn this off. Yes, that is definitely very civilized. I still need to tidy it up. I need to finish cleaning up where I've sort of ground back the welds and things like that. I need to cut the tips to length, and I need to connect up the actual switchable part, the electronics, so that I can actually open it up and see what it sounds like open. But in any case, that is definitely all the time I have for this episode. That was a lot more work than I thought it was going to be, but I have a new exhaust that is more fitting for Harry. So if you're enjoying it, as always, do all the usual stuff, like, subscribe, join us on Patreon to watch these videos ad-free a day early. And if you have to get any parts for your Porsches, make sure you check out PorschePartsByJeff.com first and compare prices there. All right, guys, see you next time.